What's up, Packer fans? Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. This is the Saturday edition of the Pack a Day podcast, but full transparency, I'm recording this on Thursday night, so I'm going to get into my topic in just a moment, kind of discussing some of the hidden ways to look at some of these key roster battles that you're going to be able to watch kind of play out on Saturday's game against the Bills and the Packers. But if anyone was released on Friday, or if there was some major news or somebody got traded or placed on IR that I'm about to talk about, I apologize in advance. But as I mentioned, I'm recording this on Thursday night, so I think everything's probably going to stay relevant. But if in case something went slightly awry, please forgive me. But let's jump in, and I want to talk about my main topic today, and that is how some of these roster battles will ultimately be decided. And it's not always just the play on the field or the overall talent of the player. There's a lot that goes into these decisions. And of course, you know that some of these final roster spots are going to be, based on special teams and versatility. They could be fighting for a roster spot, not only against somebody on their team, but against somebody who gets cut or released or traded from a different team that's, from one of the other 31 teams. That can all happen. You could also be competing against other players at different positions on your own team. For example, Malik Taylor, the 6th wide receiver, Isaiah McDuffie, maybe one of the 5th or 6th linebackers, you could, Enos Gaines, 5th or 6th safety. Like, you could only have one spot for one of those guys, right? So it's not just competing against a player in your own position group, but you could be playing or competing against players on other teams as well as different positions on your own team. These are all the roster gymnastics that Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur have to go through to make sure that they have the right players for their team in the here and the now. They can fill out their special teams. All of those things matter unequivocally. And of course, let's say you're debating Equanimeous St. Brown versus Malik Taylor, all those things I just mentioned, but of course, who's just the better wide receiver? But also the things that go into this are salary, who makes more money, controllable years, probably not something you've spent a ton of time thinking about, but if one player has more controllable seasons after this season and the other's an unrestricted free agent, that gives a major benefit to the player who has more cheap controllable years on their contract. Age and potential, all of these things play a factor. So what I want to do today is go through some of these matchups, and as you're watching these play out on Saturday, try to remember, and as we get closer and closer to cutdowns, try to remember that these decisions are not just made on the field, but there are financial and other things that you have to consider as you're trying to figure out your 53-man roster as we get closer to cutdown day. So let's start with that matchup between Malik Taylor and Equanimeous St. Brown. So battle of the tape, you can make your argument either way. I think Malik Taylor's had a much better training camp in preseason. EQ's been hurt. EQ's kind of had 3 seasons to go through this, but let's take a look at this if all things were created equal. From an age standpoint, EQ has a slight advantage here. He's 24 years old. Malik Taylor actually 25. So you could say that EQ actually has some more developmental upside there. It's less than a year, so it's not a major deciding factor in all likelihood. How about contract? Equanimeous St. Brown is set to make $850,000. I want to do a quick disclaimer here. When I do the money, this is not guaranteed money. The guaranteed money is already paid for. So this is just what you'd be paying for base salary, what you could make back if you were to release him, so to speak, if you want to look at it that way. So EQ, you'd be paying $850,000. Malik Taylor, only $780,000. Only a $70K difference, so nothing insane, but it gives a slight advantage to Malik Taylor in that capacity. The two big ones here, the two big differentiators though, controllable seasons. If both of them were to play out this season, Equanimeous St. Brown would be a free agent after this year. Malik Taylor, however, would have 2 controllable seasons after this year. He'd be an exclusive rights free agent after this season, and if he played out next season, he would then be a restricted free agent the year after that. So Malik Taylor, 2 cheap controllable seasons left. Equanimeous St. Brown, if he went out and had a big season, you'd have to pay him top dollar after this season. So that could be a huge differentiating factor. The other one here, special teams, of course. And if you look back to last season, Equanimeous St. Brown only played 41 snaps of special teams all last season. Meanwhile, Malik Taylor played 181. So there's a significant special teams difference here. There's a slight salary benefit to keeping Malik Taylor over Equanimeous St. Brown. And the big one is he has 2 controllable years left, whereas EQ has none. So if you're putting him in a vacuum and just saying, hey, everything's created equal, you're easily taking Malik Taylor over EQ in this situation. The only thing that EQ slightly has going for him is that he's slightly younger in age. That's it. Every other differentiating factor is going to go to Malik Taylor in this one. Now, again, I'm not saying necessarily play on the field, which in this scenario, I do believe Malik Taylor's actually been better in camp and throughout this offseason. But if everything were created equal, the benefit here would go to Malik Taylor. Let's jump over to the offensive line. Let's just say that there's maybe 2 to 3 spots available for Yosh Nijman, Dennis Kelly, Lucas Patrick, and Cole Van Lanen. 2 to 3 spots for those 4 guys. Let's say again, all things are created equal, which they're not, right? Let's be very, very clear. Lucas Patrick right here and now, probably the best of the 4 offensive linemen. I think that's probably not up for much debate. Dennis Kelly has been up and down, but has the veteran experience. Yosh Nijman's been playing some of the best football of his career over preseason in the last couple weeks of practice. Cole Van Lanen has very much struggled on the field, all right? So these are not players that are created equally from a here and now talent standpoint. But if you're kind of breaking it down just kind of in some of those intangible ways, Cole Van Lanen, 23 years old. Definitely the youngest of the group and the kind of more potential, just a recent draft pick, higher upside, those sort of things, right? Yosh Nijman, 25, Lucas Patrick, 28, Dennis Kelly, 31. And the other reason age matters too is just wear and tear on your body, right? Cole Van Lanen's a rookie. Yosh Nijman's had basically 2 redshirt seasons. Lucas Patrick and Dennis Kelly, a lot of wear and tear on their bodies. We've seen Kelly already have injury issues since coming on to Green Bay. So those are all things that play a part. So advantage Van Lanen and Nijman in that category. How about pay? Cole Van Lanen, $660,000 only. Yosh Nijman, $780,000. Dennis Kelly, $1,075,000. Lucas Patrick, almost $2 million, $1.975 million is what he would make additional this upcoming season if they were to keep him on the roster. So there is a major differentiating factor there. If you're looking at the potential of Dennis Kelly versus Yosh Nijman, you're almost at what, 300,000-ish, right around there? Yeah, about almost 300,000 exactly, where you're going to save by keeping Yosh instead of Dennis Kelly. How about controllable seasons? Cole Van Lanen has 3 left, and this is all after this year, so he's 3 left after this season. Yosh Nijman has 2 controllable years left. Dennis Kelly and Lucas Patrick both have none. So you can make a strong argument, the here and the now. And listen, Lucas Patrick's right now in the conversation for starting guard, right? If he starts at guard, he's going to make the team. I don't think I'm breaking any news there. But if he doesn't, and we've seen this happen with Josh Sitton in the past, Lane Taylor wins the job, Josh Sitton gets cut, and they move on and they save a bunch of money. The money here isn't quite the money that they save by cutting Josh Sitton, but you're looking at, if you keep a Cole Van Lanen as a developmental guy instead of a Lucas Patrick, you're looking at almost $1.4 million in difference by moving on from Patrick and keeping a Cole Van Lanen. That's not an insignificant amount. And as you look into future years, having controllable seasons, cheap controllable seasons for Yosh Nijman and Cole Van Lanen definitely helps their cause as well. The other side of things, this is a Super Bowl or bust season. Call it what you will. It's Super Bowl or bust. They're all in, last dance, whatever you want to call it. You might want the guys that have a bit more experience and can come in and play snaps if you need them. The reason that this might be in consideration is because you're going to have guys potentially like John Runyon Jr. and Ben Braden on your bench who can come in and still play. And if you keep either Kelly or Lucas Patrick, that's another one on the list. So maybe you keep either Kelly or Patrick, and then you go with the younger alternative, either Yosh or Cole Van Lanen at the other one. Those are interesting decisions that'll have to be made, but it just goes to show you, again, Cole Van Lanen and Yosh Nijman have a lot of things going for them that, from a financial and youth standpoint, that Dennis Kelly and Lucas Patrick do not. How about Tyler Lancaster versus Jack Heflin? This is probably the easiest one, where Jack Heflin has every advantage, right? Now, Lancaster, more experience, might be slightly better as a player right now, but not significantly so. And Jack Heflin has certainly showed flashes that he could become better than Tyler Lancaster sooner rather than later. But Heflin is 3 years younger, 23 versus 26. Heflin only makes $660,000, Lancaster $942,000 plus. So there's a significant savings there. Not quite $300K, but not far from it. Controllable seasons, Lancaster would be a free agent next year. Heflin, 3 years of controllable seasons, cheap controllable seasons after this year. So Heflin is younger, quicker, probably in better shape, probably, not as much wear and tear, has more upside, younger, cheaper, like more controllable seasons. Like Heflin has everything going for him. So I'm leaning right now that I think Jack Heflin's going to be on this team. I think Tyler Lancaster may not be. How about Jonathan Garvin versus Tipa Naliai? This is one that really just comes down to the tail of the tape and who's going to help you more now and who's going to help you more on special teams. Garvin does have the edge in age. He's actually over 2 full years younger than Tipa Naliai. He just turned 22 in July. He's super young, if you remember, coming out of college. So he does have a little bit of an edge there. Tipa, meanwhile, makes $120,000 less than Jonathan Garvin. And that could be a fairly significant factor. If they're close enough, you say, hey, one of these guys makes $120,000 less. I'm going to go with that guy if all things are created equal. And then controllable seasons. They both have 2 controllable seasons left. However, Jonathan's are signed deals, right? They're signed controllable years. There's a set amount of money that he will make. With Tipa, he'd be an exclusive rights, which is a super cheap deal next year. But then the following year would be a restricted free agent deal. So that would actually, could cost a little bit more money. It usually comes in around $2.5 million, somewhere around there. Who knows what it's 2 years from now. But if you're looking at it, these are mostly apples to apples. This is one that probably just comes down to play on the field. And again, who can help you more on special teams? How about inside linebacker? Ty Summers versus Isaiah McDuffie versus Ray Wilborn. From an age standpoint, McDuffie only 22 years old, Wilborn's 24, Summers is 25. From a pay standpoint, both McDuffie and Wilborn are making the minimum at $660,000. Meanwhile, Summers is making $850,000. So again, do you want to pay $190,000 more for Ty Summers to keep him rather than McDuffie? How about controllable seasons? McDuffie has 3 after this season. Wilborn has 2. Summers only has 1. Now, Summers is the more experienced player. He has more experience on special teams. But McDuffie and Wilborn, if they make the roster, will be core special teams guys. They're younger. You could argue have more upside and talent. And again, more controllable seasons. There's a lot of things. And again, make almost $200,000 less in salary. Again, all things created equal, you'd much rather have Isaiah McDuffie than even Wilborn or especially from Ty Summers. All things to kind of keep in mind. How about cornerback? KB Nento versus Isaac Yiadom. This is a really interesting one, or I think at least a noteworthy one. They're both 25 years of age, but Yiadom makes $310,000 more this season than Nento does. So what I kind of want to paint the picture of here is Yiadom has to be better than Nento, right? If these two are even remotely close, you're easily taking the guy that's $310,000 less. Like that's not an insignificant amount of money to have to overcome. And oh, by the way, Nento has 2 years remaining of cheap, controllable seasons. Yiadom has none. He would be an unrestricted free agent next year. So if this is close, it goes to KB Nento. No, I mean, it's not even close in that regards. So Yiadom has to show that he will be a significantly, bigger contributor this season than Nento to get any sort of return on investment. Otherwise, Nento is the much better investment here. Well, let's wrap things up by going over safety. Vernon Scott versus Innis Gaines versus Christian Uphoff. I believe there's going to be 2 spots for these 3 players. And clouding this a little bit is that Vernon Scott is injured right now. But these are mostly closely related players, both in skill, talent, upside, special teams ability, but also kind of in everything else. Innis Gaines is 22. Uphoff and Vernon Scott are both 23. Innis Gaines and Uphoff both only will make the minimum $660,000, whereas Vernon Scott makes $780,000. So that's an extra $120,000 you could save if you went with Gaines and Uphoff over Vernon Scott. And then controllable years, Innis Gaines has 2, Vernon Scott has 2, but Christian Uphoff has 3. So if you're looking at the player who probably has the better intangibles here, like the things that will factor in that aren't just play on the field, you can go with Christian Uphoff. Again, his pay is the least, his controllable years are the most. He's only 23 years old. That's an advantage over a Vernon Scott, who again makes more and has less controllable seasons. So I think they probably keep 2 of those guys. And, there's other factors here at play too, right? Which one are you most likely to get back on the practice squad? I think you can make a strong argument that if you release Innis Gaines, the likelihood that somebody claims him is probably not that great. I think you could probably say the same for Uphoff. Vernon Scott has tape from last season, was a 7th round pick, maybe a little bit more likely that he gets claimed. So these are all factors that go into these final decisions. And certainly Brian Gutekunst does not have an easy job trying to kind of filter through all of this. But the picture I wanted to paint is there's more to this than just the play on the field or the special teams and things like that. And that's always going to be a bigger factor. And especially in a season where you're desperately trying to win a Super Bowl. But All of these other things, pay, controllable seasons, special teams, versatility, injuries, all of those things are also going to play a part in these decisions. So as you're trying to put together your 53-man roster prediction, remember these, because some players have a much better advantage to kind of going into this than others do, just based on some of those dynamics that we just talked about. That's going to do it for me today. I am going to be on vacation the next couple days, so I have very special guests lined up for you on Saturday, or I guess on Sunday, as well as on Monday. So make sure to check those out. I will be back on Tuesday. We'll start going over, I'm sure some of these roster decisions will start to be leaking out maybe on Sunday and Monday. So I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about. If not, we'll be able to go over our 53-man roster prediction based on who's still on the roster. So very much excited for that, but I think you're going to love the special guests over the next 2 days. So make sure to check those out. I will see you guys on Tuesday. Enjoy Bills Packers. And as always, go Pack Go.